Inheritance is when a subclass is derived from a superclass, or other words that we use sometime, the child and the parent. So the child is derived from the parent. In order to do this in the class definition, the first line would look something like this. You'd have class def, then the name of the subclass, and then you have the less than symbol and the name of the superclass. And what happens is that properties are inherited from the superclass, but then you can also define other properties in the subclass properties block. When you call the constructor function, all of the property values that are defined in the subclass and the superclass can be passed to the constructor function. The constructor function uses the syntax obj and then the @ symbol superclass in order to call the superclass's constructor to initialize the properties that were defined there. After that, the other properties can be initialized in the subclass. Now, if you overload the disp function in the superclass, it'll be overloaded so that it displays the properties that are defined in the superclass. So then it's going to be necessary to overload it again in the subclass in order to see all of the properties, not just the ones from the superclass. Here's an example of inheritance. So in the class def, in the first line, we have the subclass less than the superclass. Let's say that the superclass has two properties already defined in it. Then in the subclass, we might define a third property. Then in the constructor function, again, we can pass all three values. So for the two properties defined in the superclass and then the one property defined here in the subclass. The obj at superclass is the way that you call the constructor function from the superclass and pass the first two values to that so that that constructor function will initialize the first two properties, and then you can explicitly initialize the third property that's defined here in the subclass to be the third value that you pass to the constructor function. So in the subclass you have the properties and the methods. That includes a constructor function, but of course you could have other methods that operate on the properties. And again, if you had the disp function overloaded in the superclass, then you'd want to overload it also here.